Tonight on BNC Live, today is International Day for the elimination of racial discrimination. What the Biden administration is doing to combat systemic racism in America and abroad. And crisis at the border. One representative is calling out failures in foreign policy, while she says the root cause needs addressing before change can be made. And Miami Beach on lockdown as the city imposes an emergency curfew to crack down on partygoers. BNC Live starts right now. Good evening, and thank you for sticking with us for this hour of BNC Live. I'm Brittany Jones. Tonight, we begin with a look at systemic racism in America. Today marks United Nations International Day for the elimination of racial discrimination. And tonight, the Biden administration is reiterating its determination to address these challenges both at home and abroad. So here's a look at some of the administration's efforts to address issues so far. Advancing racial equity in the federal government. That includes creating opportunities for the improvement of communities that have been historically underserved. Assessing domestic violent extremism, created a chief diversity and inclusion officer at the State Department in order to help with policy, and incorporate racial justice into U.S. foreign policy goals. Well, Dr. Jeremy Levitt joins us now to talk about this. Good evening, Dr. Levitt.
Good evening. Great to be with you.
Welcome back to BNC. So, Dr. Levitt, listening to some of the efforts this administration is making to address racism, how would you rate them so far?
I think it's too early to rate them. I think we're very high on the hope meter, but we need to see outcomes. The United States has signed on to one of three major human rights instruments. One of those is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. And I have yet to see now the Biden administration hardcore policy and action, meaning mandates via executive directives to the Justice Department to deal with hate crimes issues, as we've seen with the active shooting of Chinese citizens in this country. Chinese Americans are under attack. Jewish Americans are under attack. Black Americans are under attack. And so I haven't seen the commitment I'd like to see, although the pronouncements by UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield on this day, I think, are promising. But we have a long way to go.
And you mentioned her. What did you think about the statement that she made in regards to this? She says in part that the prevalence and pervasiveness of racial discrimination might make the situation look hopeless, but we remain hopeful. She also talks about exposing racism and racial discrimination. What do you think about that statement in particular?
You know, I had the pleasure of working with her when I was appointed by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and the President of Liberia to oversee the Truth and Reconciliation process in Liberia, and she was ambassador there. She's very capable. I guess the disappointing thing for me is there wasn't anything really hardcore in her statement or revealing about deadly police violence, which has captured the world. Obviously, it was the issue of summer 2020 and beyond. And remember, on this day, this International Day, to celebrate and move forward with the regime against racial discrimination, it was created out of the Sharpeville massacre, which occurred in 1960 in South Africa, where police officers killed 69 Black South Africans who were protesting police brutality. So on a day where police brutality is the subject and the rationale, meaning the reason to be for the day, I would have liked to seen a statement out of the U.S. administration about police brutality as we continue to move forward in 2021.
And we know that is exactly what Black folks are talking about. So let me ask you this. The administration mentions that their efforts are also geared towards fixing the issues, you know, right here at home and then also abroad. How important is it to address these issues internationally as well?
Well, we have to be careful that we're not hypocritical, because it's easy for us to use our political and our military and our economic might to criticize and move other countries in the direction that we want to move them. We've done this throughout our history, but at the same time we were condemning apartheid South Africa, we had Jim Crow segregation in America. At the same time we're moving forward with criticizing authoritarian regimes, we have a proliferation of domestic violent extremists and white supremacist groups in the country, many of whom have infiltrated law enforcement at the local, state, and federal levels. So I think this is the time to be nativist. It's the time for us to look internal and get our house clean before we start preaching to other countries about what they should do.
And Dr. Levitt, you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. So is there anything missing from the list in terms of efforts still needed to address issues specifically for Black people that, those are the things right now that we said we are talking about and maybe they haven't addressed them just yet?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. They have not addressed the issue of reparations. How can we move forward with the discussion about the elimination of racial discrimination when we recognize it as an original sin? We recognize it as a crime. There has been no crime that has not been committed upon Black Americans in this country, yet an administration that actually ran on the question of Black empowerment and reparations was an issue front and center in the 2020 election. This administration with Kamala Harris has not addressed it. So we can talk about the Divine Nine and HBCUs, all that we want, but until we're really willing to deal with the issue of reparations for African Americans, any conversation about racial justice is incomplete.
And how helpful will it be, you talk about placing a U.S. representative to the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in rooting out racism in the state parties? How helpful will that position be?
Well, I think it will be quite useful. I mean, obviously, we're in a state in the last 4 years where many believed that we had a racist and fascist government in place. They withdrew our participation from the CERD committee. And so now Gay McDougal has been appointed to that position. She is one of the most capable African-American international lawyers, one of the most capable human rights lawyers, period. So she will go on and represent the cause of racial justice globally, as well as keeping an eye on the United States. So I think it's a wonderful move by the Biden administration in this context, but we have to keep the pressure up on them.
Now, what message would you send to them, Dr. Levitt? You talk about some of the things that you mentioned, reparations, police brutality, all the things that haven't necessarily been addressed yet. What message would you send to them tonight saying that there's still a lot more to be done?
First, I would say the Democratic Party has to deliver to African Americans. We have Democratic administrations in every urban city in this country, and we're still the poorest and the most unemployed. We are still the group that has the greatest needs. So we need this administration and the Democratic Party and Democratic representatives around the country to deliver real policy outcomes for African Americans and to be bold and courageous. The Biden administration was elected because of the African American vote. So we need the issue of reparations on the table. We need the issue of jobs on the table. We need the issue of a fair vaccine program because Black people are dying at 3 times the rate with COVID-19. We need debt forgiveness. There are things that we need to move up to the next level. Justice is one of those, equity, equality, and certainly we have to have a better, I think, stake in the discussion of the treatment of Black women across the country, but particularly how Black women are left out of the major debates when it comes to justice generally. We either get caught into a race issue or a gender issue. One is predominated by white women, the other is predominated by Black men. We need to see an increase in the focus of the specific needs of African American women.
Well, we know that work, like you just mentioned, is far from over. Dr. Jeremy Levitt, we appreciate your time, and we will continue to follow his first 100 days for Black America here on BNC. President Biden releasing this statement in part. He says racism, xenophobia, nativism, and other forms of intolerance are not problems unique to the United States. They are global problems. They are human problems that we all need to recognize, name, and dismantle. Hate can have no safe harbor in America. It should have no safe harbor anywhere in the world. We must join together to make it stop. Jury selection will continue tomorrow in the Derek Chauvin trial. Derek Chauvin is the former police officer on trial for the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Our chief legal correspondent, Dr. Laura McNeil, has been covering the case and brings us a preview on what we can expect this week.
This has been an eventful week in the Derek Chauvin trial.
And to the latest on the pandemic now, the city of Miami Beach has imposed an 8 p.m. curfew in its busiest district to crack down on out-of-control parties. NBC footage shows police making what appeared to be several arrests on Saturday night. The crackdown comes as partiers from across the state and the country have flocked to Miami Beach for its warm weather, famed party scene, and loose COVID-19 restrictions compared to other states. The curfew measures are in effect for at least 72 hours. And some sad news to report tonight. Kent Taylor, the co-founder and CEO of the Texas Roadhouse restaurant, has committed suicide after battling post-COVID-19 symptoms. According to Kentucky State Police, Taylor's body was found in a field on his property near Louisville. His family released a statement saying that he suffered from severe tinnitus, a condition that causes ringing and other noises in the ear. The statement also says that he fought the condition, but the suffering greatly intensified in recent days and became unbearable. Taylor co-founded the Texas Steakhouse chain and made headlines last year when he gave up his bonus to pay workers during the pandemic. Taylor donated about $500,000 to help chain workers put food on the table. Taylor was 65. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling on the CDC to launch a $1 billion ad campaign to promote the COVID vaccine. According to the CDC, more than 124 million people have been vaccinated in the United States. Senator Schumer believes that number could be higher, but outreach is needed to help dispel misinformation about the vaccine. He says if people are afraid of the vaccine, it will delay the ability to beat COVID. Schumer says the first documented case of the Brazilian COVID variant has been discovered in Brooklyn. New York will receive about 1.65 million vaccines a week by the end of April. And Dr. Lane Rolling is back with us tonight to talk about the latest on the pandemic. Good evening, my friend. Welcome back to BNC.
Good evening to you, Brittany, and the staff. Super Sunday.
All right, Dr. Rowland, so every time we hear about a new variant, it certainly raises our antennas. Let's start with the new B.1.1.7 variant. That was spotted first in the UK, and it's not only more easily transmitted, but appears to be more deadly. Tell us more about that.
Well, the reality is that this is where the virus is going to take us and stuff. When we start talking about the SARS virus, one of the interesting thing about the biochemistry virology part of it is that this virus mutates on a regular basis every 2 weeks. You have to understand that the B.1.1.7, the London strain, is an offshoot or what we call a subtype of the Wuhan strain. And the 1.1.7, the London strain, is much more effective. It has a greater capabilities of causing significant infection in individuals. And it also affects not just adults or older folks, it also affects children. So when we look at these variants in the world, there's almost 4,000 different variants out there. But the ones that we know about is the Brazil strain, we know about the South African strain, we know about the Denmark strain and the London strain, and even the California hybrid strain, which is a combination of the California strain itself and also the B.1.1.7. I think what's important is that people need to realize that we are not at the end. We're just at the beginning of these different variant mutations. I want people to think about it like this. The D614, the Wuhan strain, started all these variants. These are baby cousins. And then we have to worry about what happens if there's a mutant strain that becomes of the B.1.1.7 or the Brazil strain. And so this is going to become more and more deadly. What we do know is that if you do catch the 1.1.7 or the Brazil strain, you have a 65% more chance of dying. So that tells you how effective this virus is in causing infection in a human being. So we have a long ways to go, and that's why we have to have a very significant control program based off of biosecurity protocols in mitigating and containing vaccines, rapid testing, effective, etc.
And Dr. Rowland, do you think the vaccines are able to protect against these particular variants?
Oh, absolutely not. And this is when you start understanding vaccines and understanding biochemistry, virology, you have to understand that when you look at we'll use Pfizer as an example because that seems to be the standard. This Pfizer vaccine was produced off of the D614G, the Wuhan strain. That's what it was made out of. They got a person that was sick with that strain last year, took a sample, went into the laboratory, made this strain into their vaccine platform, came out with a vaccine, and that's what they're injecting everybody with. Well, guess what, folks? That vaccine is effective for the D614, not for the Brazil strain, not for the South African strain, not for the London strain. That is why the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has a 10% effective fitness, or what we call vaccine effectiveness in the field against the South African strain, and that's why that vaccine was pulled from that market. So every strain that's out there, you have to have a vaccine for that particular strain, and it's only one vaccine company that has that ability to make that change right now. It's a company making a vaccine called COVAX, and COVAX is a synthetic peptide vaccine platform, and has the ability to be manufactured within 6 weeks of a new strain. And so each of these vaccine platforms has to have great flexibility, because we have a long ways to go, and as far as it's going to continue to mutate until we get control of the population worldwide that's infected.
And Dr. Rowland, let's get your opinion on this. Senator Chuck Schumer says if people are afraid of the vaccine, it will delay our ability to beat COVID back. What do you think about this statement, and do you think his statement is a reflection of what some black folks are saying?
Oh, absolutely. The senator should have been talking last year when the past administration was putting out bogus information about people drinking Clorox, and this is going to go away in the springtime. He should have been an advocate and sat down with the black community and told the black community, hey, this is the reality of the virus. And so now what's happened is that now everybody's trying to play catch up, and the virus is already out the bag. And so the bottom line at the end of the day, that he is absolutely right, and this plays into the fear of black folks trying to get this vaccine. And folks, they have put this on CNN, USA Today. It's everywhere. We all know what happened here in America with the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, them doing lobotomies on black boys in New York who were hyperactive in 4th and 5th grade. They would do lobotomy. So that fear, also the lack of respect for the black community, also the lack of healthcare access to black folks. For example, you want to talk about diabetes? Well, black folks get their legs cut off at a tremendous amount of rate, higher than other people, because what's happened is that the system did not respect black folks. They didn't really were involved in it. So now we have to have an active program where people are positive, giving black folks and significant people, minorities, the ability to have great access and great information. But that is part of the problem why there's a lack of sincerity and a lack of confidence in the vaccine programs.
Well, Dr. Rowland, you always keep us informed. Thank you so much for letting us know all of that great information tonight. We'll see you next Sunday.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brittany, and tell your staff, Mo, everybody, you guys be safe, and I'll see you guys next week. You guys take care. Super evening.
Brittany.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back to BNC Live. Democratic Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock is slamming Republican efforts to restrict voter access. A key committee in the state legislature is now working on a massive new voting bill to give the state board powers over local election officials. It would also set limits on weekend early voting and add voter ID requirements for absentee ballots. Warnock says Republicans need to explain why they want to limit such a foundational freedom.
Voting rights traditionally has been bipartisan. The last time we reauthorized the 1965 Voting Rights Act, George W. Bush was president, and it passed the United States Senate 98-0. I think the onus is on my colleagues to explain why they're not supporting voting rights. Voting rights is not just one issue alongside other issues. It is fundamental. It is foundational. It is who we say we are as an American people. It's the covenant we have with one another, one person, one vote. And so we've got to do everything we can to pass voting rights.
And Georgia has been at the forefront of efforts to set new limits on voting nationwide. That's after a stream of false claims by former President Donald Trump that widespread fraud led to his loss to President Joe Biden in November. Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar says the media is missing the point on immigration border crisis. Omar, who was a refugee who fled Somalia, says she wants the U.S. to address what she calls failures in foreign policy and wants the media to focus on the root causes. The Democratic Congresswoman is also urging her colleagues on Capitol Hill to change the way they think about immigration.
I think that there are some failures that are taking place, and it's really important for us to show the basic humanity and treat the causes of migration in the region. It means, addressing the root causes of the situation. It means dealing with our cruel and contradictory foreign policy that arms the very state actors that are fueling the migrant crisis. It means understanding that surges happen, and this conversation around the hysteria that is happening with the Republicans right now is centered around gaining political points. It's not about the safety of Americans.
And last week, Republicans introduced a new ad campaign that accused the Biden administration of being at fault for opening the border. The GOP ad claims Biden should be focusing on reopening schools and businesses that are closed due to the pandemic instead. Mourners in Tanzania are paying their respects to the late President John Magufuli. Magufuli, one of Africa's most prominent coronavirus skeptics, died at age 61 from heart disease last Wednesday. That's after being absent from the public eye for more than a week. Some mourners appeared so grief-stricken that they were taken out in stretchers. President-elect Samia Suluhu Hassan will succeed him, becoming the country's first woman president. And Pope Francis is urging people around the world to fight organized crime groups such as the mafia, warning that they are using the COVID-19 pandemic to further enrich themselves. Last December, the Paris-based Interpol police issued a global alert warning that organized criminal networks were targeting COVID-19 vaccines. In March, South African police seized hundreds of fake COVID-19 vaccines and arrested 4 suspects. Italian police say crime clans are using the pandemic to win favor with poor families facing financial ruin, offering loans and food. NCAA championships continue. We'll show you if your favorite teams are in or out, folks, as we get down to the wire in March Madness. Plus, find out what former SWAC basketball student athlete turned NBA champion is tonight's BNC King of the Hill. James Hill is up next with your BNC Sports. Welcome back. We've all got a little cooking skills in us, right? Well, that's if we try. Well, one Richmond, Virginia chef teaches you how to do just that right in your own home. It's Entrepreneur Sunday here on BNC, and tonight we spotlight Chef Christelle of Chris's Cuisine, who takes down-home cooking to a whole new level. Christelle, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us for Entrepreneur Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
And so, Christelle, tell us all about how you started Chris's Cuisine and where your love for cooking began. I know you got a good backstory.
Yes, so Chris's Cuisine was established in 2018. And my love for cooking started when I was a little girl, having the opportunity to visit my grandparents in Chicago, Illinois every summer and during the holidays. My grandmother was a Mississippian who migrated from the South to Chicago in the 40s, and she just loved cooking for her family. She was from she basically had 10 siblings, so you can imagine, the massive that they had to provide. So watching her and watching my mother in the kitchen, it just, I became inquisitive and wanting to know how to cook those great dishes.
So you kind of hopped in on the assembly line, if you will.
Yes. She hazed me. So I would, help her by cutting up the cheddar cheese for the macaroni and cheese. But one thing about her, most grandparents would love to, share the recipes with you. She didn't do that. Her focus was, we can talk about everything else, but you're going to learn how to cook by observation. And so she never me how much went into this piece or how much went into that cup. I had to actually study and watch her. But then when I would learn from my mother, of course, she wouldn't have a problem telling me what went inside the entrees. But again, I do, just thank her for teaching me in that manner, but also just being able to study the craft.
Wow, so you learned a lot by just watching. I mean, you know, I talked to other chefs in the past, and we talk about how folks have taught them to eyeball it. So that was one of the things that you had to learn yourself, right?
Yes, 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 definitely.
So, well, Christelle, we know virtual kitchens have also become quite popular. They help those who don't have the money to open a restaurant or an actual food truck. You're actually doing this by whipping up stuff in your own kitchen and teaching people. How has that worked for you, especially during the pandemic?
Well, of course, the pandemic has opened up a lot of creative boxes for everyone if you take advantage of it. And so, you know, having the opportunity to teach virtual classes from the kitchen has allowed me to, you know, embrace those who I may not even get a chance to even meet around the world. And so I would say my alma mater, Hampton University, they have allowed me to conduct some virtual classes with a lot of alums and friends of Hampton University. And, you know, the virtual cooking, it challenges one to be able to be creative in the kitchen. I also work inside of, you know, commercial kitchens as well. But, you know, during this time period, a lot of people, you know, you can't go out anywhere. And so, you know, the lack of entertainment and the lack of being able to socialize, this is what we've basically been conducive to doing. And so it's been great, you know, just learning from others, sharing their creative side and challenging them in the kitchen so that it doesn't become redundant in the kitchen and that, you know, families can come together and create a great art.
I love that. I mean, I started thinking that I was a chef myself just because of the pandemic and you being forced to be in your own kitchen. So you like chopping up stuff and everything like that. So, you know, Christelle, I saw the creamy Tuscan chicken with roasted potatoes, bourbon roasted Cornish hen, grilled jumbo shrimp, which are my favorite. What's some of your most requested dishes?
Awesome. I'm glad you asked me that. Well, the sweet basil cornbread is one that cannot steal. With every entree that is ordered, the sweet basil cornbread is #1 on the list. As you mentioned, the creamy garlic Tuscan chicken, the grilled stuffed jumbo shrimp, as well as the scallop shrimp linguine with vodka sauce. So everything that I have listed, all entrees and dishes that I have listed on the menus, they don't sit still. They are constantly moving. And so every month I create a theme every month, and I just want to, you know, challenge the palate so that all of my clients can endure in some great entrees. And
so what's your advice for aspiring entrepreneur chefs like yourself looking to get into doing those virtual cooking classes?
I would just recommend for you to stay focused. If this is your dream and passion, make it happen. You know, no idea is a bad idea. I thought when I started Chris's Cuisine, which was always a childhood dream of mine, and always wanted to be on cooking shows, I thought it would happen once I, you know, had a brick and mortar restaurant. And so having the faith and believing in myself, that spirit told me, you're going to start catering first. And in 2018, that's where, you know, catering began. And, you know, my clientele was huge in the very beginning, as far as you know, catering for state legislators and so forth. And then it broadened as far as being on cooking shows. Poolside Cooking opened up that door during COVID, where we provided a great television show outdoors. And then it opened up opportunities for virtual cooking, where it challenged each families to come together and work within the kitchen to provide a great meal. So I would just say, be open and go for it.
I love that. Well, lastly, Christelle, where can our viewers find your services? You know, everybody's hearing about this food, but they got to know where they can find you.
Yes, you can definitely follow me on Instagram at Kris, KRYS .cuisine, KUISINE, and you will see all of the great dishes, all of the menus that will be provided, and all the great events and opportunities that Chris's Cuisine will be a part of. And then, of course, you can contact me at area code 773-851-5685.
All right, Christelle Jordan, thank you so much for joining us for Entrepreneur Sunday, and many blessings to you and your business.
Thank you.
And if you haven't already eaten your dinner, I know you're hungry now after hearing that. Well, Chris's Cuisine caters corporate events and hosts private dinners. Christelle tells me she also flies and drives to some of your areas, and her virtual classes are held toward the end of the month. James?
All-star coach of the Western Conference All-Stars. His coaching resume includes the Dallas Mavericks, the New Jersey and Brooklyn Nets, and also the University of Alabama. Avery Johnson, AJ, is our BNC King of the Hill.
And James, what does it say about the type of people, the product that HBCUs put out?
Very phenomenal human beings. You know, we've always been told by our grandparents, if you want something, you may have to work 10 or 15 times harder. At least 10 times harder. So a lot of your students coming out of HBCUs know that they have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, so to speak, and nobody can outwork them. They'll come in early, they'll leave late, they really, really grind. And so Avery is the epitome of someone that had to go that route. A special gentleman, a very humble, faith-oriented gentleman, and he's a great announcer, a great coach, and he was a really good point guard, too.
And literally what we call making it to the top of his game.
Yeah, he was better than good.
All right, James, we're going to take a quick break. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
You got it.
A little bit warmer temperatures, but Atlanta, here's your 7-day forecast. You see on Tuesday, the rain starts to pick up. And then by Wednesday, you got that 60% chance, and then thunderstorms on Thursday.
We got to start growing our flowers, right? We need the rain.
That's a good way to look at it, Brittany.
Always. All right, well, we promised we would bring this back. Hip-hop and R&B fans, hold on to your seats. Another round of Versus showdowns are on the way. Versus has revealed the lineup for their next 2 battles, and we are excited, and hinted at a slate of upcoming performances for the next 6 battles. First up is a battle of the greats. We're talking about the iconic Isley Brothers will square off against Earth, Wind, and Fire in the next Versus battle on an Easter Day, April 4th. Versus also teased a list of highly anticipated matchups, including their How High special that will go down on April 20th, a Mother's Day special, and a Ladies' Night battle. All right, Britt, so you told the folks you was going to sing your song when we came back.
Wait, I had to sing it.
Huh?
Okay, so my favorite Isley Brothers song is For the Love of You. I Gotta Redeem Myself. And my favorite Earth, Wind, and Fire song, I'm gonna go with September. We're gonna have to get a Soul Train line.
How we used to something. Now, I say that too for all the lines that I don't know. So there's that.
But, you remember?
Okay, I can think of Isley. Shouts out to Mike if he's listening. Choosy Lover.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Choosy Lover.
And then another Earth, Wind, and Fire song. Let's groove
tonight. Hey.
Share the spice of life.
See, I'll just be in the background making the beats. Yes.
Bring Soul Train back.
Yes. I don't even remember the lyrics. Okay. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this hour of BNC Live. We will see you back here with much more news, weather, sports, and entertainment, and singing for you. Oh gosh. All right. We got it together, y'all. 9 o'clock. Let's roll. Last one.